Imagine it's the holidays and you've just finished consuming your second platter of turkey with all the fixings. You've already unbuttoned your pants and a few small beads of sweat have begun to form on your brow. You've never been so full in all of your life and there's no way you could eat another bite. But then the pie tray comes out. There's pumpkin pie, pecan pie, apple pie, and even sugar pie. I'm sure just a small sliver of each won't hurt, right? And maybe just a small dollop of a whipped cream. You know, you shouldn't have eaten it all, but it's the holidays and there's nothing stopping you from getting back to the gym on Monday. Yeah, right. You make your way to the sofa, your pants are still unbuttoned. There are no longer just beads of sweat on your brow. Now your hair is wet and the sweat is literally rolling down your face. Your indigestion and heartburn are worse than they've ever been before. And a family member asks, "Are you okay? Because you're looking a little pale." You say you're fine. You just need a few Tums and you'll be right as rain. But your cousin is there and she's a nurse and she says, "You know what? You are looking a little pale and it's probably nothing, but it wouldn't hurt to have a doctor give you a quick once over." Your spouse agrees and you just don't have the energy to argue. So they load you up in the car and they even let you have the front seat. They walk you into the emergency department and sit you down at the triage desk. You aren't really listening while your spouse shares your stories. You just want to get home and rest in front of the TV. But before you know it, two nurses have stood up and laid you down on a stretcher. You're wheeled behind a curtain, and the next thing you know, your shirts and pants are off. There's a nurse holding your right arm and jabbing you with a needle. There's another nurse with your left arm jabbing you there. Suddenly, there's an oxygen mask covering your face, and another nurse is placing a whack of stickers across your chest. There's a dark doctor barking orders, and you feel a tightness around your bicep as somebody takes your blood pressure. What is going on? Is all this really necessary? All you did was eat a little too much turkey. Now, I saw this scenario and countless similar ones play out working as a paramedic in the Denver General Hospital, one of the country's busiest, most traumatic emergency departments. The doctors and nurses who work there are the best of the best. They're no nonsense and they get the job done. If I was in need of a life and death care, I'd want to be treated by those fine workers. But let's go back to our turkey trauma patient for a minute. As you can probably guess, this particular individual wasn't suffering from heartburn and indigestion, but rather a full-blown, "I'm coming, Elizabeth," heart attack. What did this patient need more than anything? This patient needed his condition to be diagnosed and the appropriate medical treatment to be administered as quickly as possible. But what did this patient want? This patient just wanted to know what the heck was going on. I still remember clear as day when this patient came into my ER. It was 1994, and I was a paramedic student at the Swedish Medical Center in Englewood, Colorado. Traditionally, patients like this are a paramedic student's dream. We get to start IVs and push some meds. We can draw blood and sit up and read the EKG. And if we're lucky, the patient might even code and we can defibrillate them. But when these patients come in, I never jumped at any of that stuff. Instead, I would position myself right beside the patient's head. This was great for me because I was out of the way, but I got to see everything that was going on. But it was even better for the patient because I was there to explain what was going on and answer any questions. I was able to explain that much of what we were doing was just precautionary. There was no need to worry or be scared. They were in the right place at the right time, being cared for by some of the world's greatest clinicians. While all the doctors and nurses were treating the patient like a biological entity in crisis, I was connecting with my patient on a very human level. It was my compassion for my patients as people instead of just as victims that defined my career. As a firefighter, one of the coolest things we get to do is rip open a car with the jaws of life to extricate a trapped driver. But on those calls, I never race for the spreaders. Instead, I race for a blanket. Quite often, I take off my helmet and coat so I could squeeze into the car beside my patient. I place the blanket over both of our heads and tell dad jokes as glass shattered and metal was torn all around us. Of course, I always ensured my patients received all the medical care they required, but I never provided that care at the expense of bonding that human connection. I always made sure to empathize with my patient and understand what they were feeling and how I could help them beyond just the biological care they required. But in 2002, I fell 35 feet off a cliff and I broke my arm, my leg, and my back. And that temporary break from my helicopter paramedic job became a permanent career retirement when I decided to abandon the long, grueling night shifts and ridiculous office politics in exchange for pursuing my entrepreneurial spirit. It's a bit of a convoluted story for how I got there, but in 2016, I found myself as a Facebook advertiser, meaning businesses would hire me to run their Facebook ads for them. Earlier in the year, I had hired a mentor, and with just a few weeks, he literally said I was better at running ads than he was. Nobody knew how I was doing it. I didn't even know how I was doing it. I figured it out later, but at that time, it almost seemed like just blind, dumb luck. One of my clients that year was a boot camp gym operating out of Chino Hills, California. The gym was owned by two brothers, but they both had to work full-time jobs to keep the boot camp afloat. Their dream, however, was for both of them to work the gym full-time. I was hired not just to run their Facebook ads, but build and promote their entire marketing campaign. The first thing I did when I got there was check out what they were doing already. They were doing exactly the same thing as the most successful gyms in California. They had an edgy black and white website with these drop-dead gorgeous fitness models on their pages and in their ads. They had a variety of different program options and a promise to have you beach body ready in as little as 12 weeks. Again, comparing their marketing and campaigns to the super successful California gyms, it appeared they were doing everything right, but they weren't making the sales. So the next thing I did was I visited the gym. And you know what I found there? I found a bunch of normal people who on the whole ranged from being about 20 pounds to 80 pounds overweight. When I spoke to these sweaty individuals after their workouts, without exception, they raved about the community spirit the gym contained. They talked about being accepted and never judged. They talked about the support and encouragement they experienced. And they talked about all the gains and success they had experienced, even if none of that was readily apparent from the outside. Do you know what I didn't see at that gym? With the exception of the owners and the trainers, and I didn't see a single person who would be conventionally described as having a beach body. What I determined from my time spent with these amazing people, that attaining a beach body was never their goal. They just wanted to shed a few pounds, improve their health, and work out somewhere that they didn't feel any shame or embarrassment. None of the other gyms were promoting those aspirations in the least. They all had the Tony Horton P90X Beachbody message. So I flipped everything on its head. I got rid of all the fitness model images on the websites and I replaced them with real people from the gym. I interviewed one woman named Kristen. She was clearly overweight, but she shared her story of having already lost 80 pounds. She said that although her friends and family supported her weight loss journey, they weren't in the journey with her. When I asked her about the owners, the trainers, and the other members, she waved her hands and broke down in tears. She said that she never felt so loved and supported anywhere else in her life. Her video testimonial ended with her saying, "I love you guys." And once I changed up their website and ads, crazy things began to happen. The gym owners only gave me a $10 per day or $300 per month ad budget to promote their 3-week $49 fitness challenge. But on the strength of that testimonial video ads from Kristen and the others, we were able to get ad clicks as low as 9 cents each. And on our best day, we made 5 sales. That means we spent $10 to bring in $250 on the front end alone. On the back end, they were selling a 6-month, $600 membership that they had a 70% conversion rate for. When all was said and done, we ended up with a 36-to-1 return on ad spend, meaning that the $300 ad spend converted to $10,380 in sales on a monthly basis. Within 6 months, both brothers had quit their jobs and were living their dream working the gym full time. How do we make that all possible? We did it by harnessing our empathy. We did it not just by understanding who our audience was and what they wanted, but we were able to create an audience that genuinely felt understood. That's the human connection. That's the link and the bond that artificial intelligence will never be able to make. I'm not saying AI isn't a fabulous tool. It can analyze data and provide answers like nobody's business, but it's just a tool. AI is most definitely the future, but human connection will always be the present. More than anything, our audiences don't want to be sold to. They don't want to be seen only as stats on a spreadsheet or sales on a ledger. Our audiences want that authentic human connection. They want to be understood. Artificial intelligence, artificial intelligence isn't authentic. It's right there in the name. It's artificial. Let's look at it this way. When a sale is made, there's a buyer-seller relationship. How important is empathy in that relationship? It's just as important as any other relationship you're involved in. Let's look at your romantic relationships for a minute. Imagine you find the perfect partner. They're good looking with an amazing body. They're financially secure with a nice car and money in the bank. They're funny and they like the same food and movies that you do. But they don't understand why your family is so important to you. Why do you have to talk to your mom and dad every night? Why do you have to visit them every weekend? Why do you drop everything the minute they call? And maybe it's not the relationship you have with their parents that they don't understand. Maybe they don't understand why saving money is so important to you. Or maybe they don't understand or support your decision not to eat meat. Or they don't understand why you have to go for a run every single day. Think about it. Imagine finding somebody who on the surface appears to be your perfect partner, but they just don't get you. They don't understand you and they don't feel understood. How long will a relationship like that last? Now, think back to your childhood. Or if you have kids, think about how they feel about you. What was your biggest beef with your parents? What is your kid's biggest beef with you? You just don't understand me, right? I think it's crazy. So often when we speak about what we're looking for in a relationship, we talk about a sense of humor, shared interests, kindness, and stuff like that. I'm not saying these things aren't important, but we never say, I just want to be with somebody who understands me. I just want to feel understood. This is true in every relationship, and the buyer-seller relationship is no different. One thing we need to keep in mind is that all of us are selling something. We may not be selling a product or a service in exchange for cash, but we're selling our personality. We're selling our ideas. I quite often have people say to me, it was great talking with you. Do you know what I said in the majority of those conversations? Nothing. I just listened. But for the person who was granted all that time helping me understand their ideas and who they were just, I don't know what I was trying to say there. That conversation was priceless. It's all about empathy. It's all about understanding your audience and leaving your audience feeling understood. Who do you think is the most empathic person in America today? Some people might say Tom Hanks or Ed Sheeran or Tyra Banks or Oprah. But let's not confuse being nice with having true empathy. Do you know who I think is the most empathic person in the U.S. today? It's Donald Trump, hands down. Now hear me out. Donald Trump understands his audience possibly better than any other person in history. Who is Donald Trump? He's a Wharton School of Business educated billionaire who comes from old money. Who are the core Donald Trump supporters? They are poor, white, uneducated men who live in regions of the country with a racial bias. With increasing globalization, this demographic has suffered over the past few decades as they've experienced decreasing employment rates and increasing mortality rates. Conversely, men and women with four-year degrees have seen increases in both wealth and health. The most important discriminator for Trump's voting base is they don't feel they have a voice. And because they are poorly informed, they believe it's foreign influences that are primarily responsible for their increasing hardships. But who are they turning to be their voice? An eccentric billionaire who is afforded every opportunity and luxury available with a silver spoon. Donald Trump and his core voting base are almost in every way that matters polar opposites. Let's go back to your romantic relationship for a minute. Remember when we said that you may have found someone who is otherwise the perfect person, but without feeling understood, the relationship is doomed? Well, Trump's relationship with his base is the reverse of that. Trump is the exact opposite of what his voter base would otherwise gravitate to. But since he so truly understands what I call their 4Ds of transformation delivery, their difficulties and desires, dreads and dreams, he's able to speak to them in a way that spurs them into action. He doesn't talk blandly about lost jobs and his plan for job creation. Instead, he feeds on their conspiracies and insecurities and doomsday scenarios. He puts a face on the enemy and promises to destroy it. He doesn't get lost in the minutia or the plan or the reality of how he'll deliver on these promises because he knows his audience. He knows they don't trust politicians or their plans or their promises. So he simply becomes one of them. He makes them forget that prior to running for election, he was part of the root cause for everything that has gone wrong in their lives. Trump understands his audience at a level no politician in history ever has. And with this knowledge, he's able to say exactly what they want to hear so they leave feeling understood. This is why I believe Trump is the most empathic man in America, if not in history. Empathy is a trait like any other. For some of us, it comes naturally, while for others, they have to work a little harder and strive a bit more to be conscientious about it. Remember when I said that back in 2016, nobody, including myself, knew why I was so good at Facebook ads? It's because other advertisers were primarily focused on their targeting, on testing different campaign objectives, on split testing different copy and creatives. The other advertisers focused on the ads side of the relationship. Instead of focusing on the ad side of the relationship, I focused on the audience side. I focused on truly understanding my audience and their 4Ds of transformation delivery. I do something that I was never taught to do and I've never heard any other advertiser even mention doing. When I do my audience targeting, I go deeper than just targeting their problem. I target who they are as a person. I'm a marketing consultant. I used to primarily work with small business owners and entrepreneurs. I have a bunch of direct and indirect competitors who are going after this same audience. So, to get our ads in front of these people, we'll target those who have raised their hands and identified themselves as small business owners and entrepreneurs. They probably follow people like Russell Brunson, Mary Forleo, and Frank Kern. And they may use tools like Infusionsoft and Shopify. If you combine all those attributes into a Facebook ad campaign, you'll have a potential audience in the tens of millions. And this is what most advertisers do. They'll start a broad campaign like that and test whether the Russell Brunson or the Frank Kern audience performs better. And then they'll optimize and shift their ad budgets from there. And to be honest, it's not a terrible strategy. But here's the thing. You may be targeting 10 million entrepreneurs who like Frank Kern, but that's about all they have in common. When speaking to an audience this broad, you're going to have to speak in sweeping generalities. You won't be able to speak to those with the You won't be able to speak to those folks with the specificity of Donald Trump speaking to poor, white, uneducated males who think they are losing their jobs to immigrants who are also bad hombres. This is why when I target my audience, I'll also target what they do, meaning they may have a small business and they may follow Mary Forleo and they may use Infusionsoft, but to see my ads, they'll also have an interest in horses and in off-the-grid living and adventure travel. Now listen, nothing I sell has anything to do with horses or off-the-grid living or adventure travel, but I'm a guy who lives off the grid with my 3 horses, and for my vacations, I tend to hike up mountains. So think about it. Imagine you're a small business owner who, instead of coveting sports cars and high-rise penthouses, you dream of living in a cabin in the woods, far from the noise of the city. Then one day you're on Facebook and you see an ad from some slick dude in his fancy office offering you a service you could probably use. Will you buy from him? Maybe not right away, but you tell yourself you'll think about it. Then you see an ad from me, but I'm not in my office. I'm out with my quarter horses, Xena and Diaz, and in the background you can see my solar panels. I make the exact same offer as that previous guy. How likely are you to buy now? The reality is that you most likely won't buy from either of us right away. With the other guy, you'll most likely just gloss over his ad. But with me, you'll look at my ad more closely and you may even click to see what I have on my webpage. Now again, if this was your first exposure to me, it's unlikely you'll buy anything. But now that you've engaged with my ad and been to my website, I can retarget you with more ads. Now, the other guys can retarget too, but what they do is test different hooks and offers until they find the one that converts the best. What I do is a little different. I don't keep on trying to sell you. Instead, I work on growing our relationship. I do my best to teach you more about who I am, what I do, and like Simon Sinek says, why I do it. I'll encourage interactions, and the more we interact, the more you'll get to understand me, and the more I'll understand you. We now know that having empathy can allow a paramedic to provide more holistic care. Understanding your audience can give gym owners the opportunity to quit their day jobs and work the gym full time. And if your audience really feels understood, having empathy can make you the president of the United States. But here's the important thing. Displaying empathy and connecting with your audience at the most human of levels is something you all can do. Yes, some of us fall into empathy more easily than others, but anyone can learn it. I know it sounds weird to say, but there are systems that you can implement that will allow your audience to feel more understood. It's never too late to start working on your empathy. Because like I said before, artificial intelligence may be the future, but human connections will always be the present.